Okay, let's set the scene for an overwhelmed neurodivergent mom, a mom who's tried all the expert tips from timeouts to sticker charts to self care Sundays, yet still ends most days feeling like she's failing or too much to handle. See, traditional parenting resources assume a neurotypical parent and child. So when an ND mom follows the advice to the letter and it backfires, she's left wondering, what's wrong with me or my child? And this episode addresses that silent frustration. It's not the mom or child who are broken, it's the one size fits all advice. Most mainstream parenting advice is built around a vision of normal that doesn't account for sensory overload, ADHD style executive function struggles, autistic communication differences, or the roller coaster emotions that ND moms often experience. So, tips like just be consistent with routines or stay calm and carry on can feel impossible when your own nervous system is in overdrive. The result? Neurodivergent mothers end up feeling alienated and ashamed despite doing everything right. So let's make clear together, as likely many of us here are indie moms ourselves, we are not alone and we are not failing. The standard playbook wasn't written for brains like ours. So, shining a light on why traditional parenting advice falls flat and showcasing what actually works for ND parents, this episode aims to replace guilt with relief. I might add a little bit of validation. We're talking fresh strategies and human stories that validate the real experience of ND motherhood. It's about moving from I'm constantly overwhelmed and must be a bad mom to I can do this my way and my family will thrive. This is deeply in line with our show's mission of living life in full color and building a life that fits your brain, not forcing your brain to fit someone else's mold. So let me introduce you to an incredible woman. And how do I know this? Because I've listened to her story over a dozen times. Meet Sara Lewis Hartley, a kindred spirit. Sara Lewis Hartley is an ADHD and neurodiversity coach, children's author, and a mom of two neurodivergent boys. By day, she's also a healthcare executive, but her true passion is helping families choose connection over perfection in parenting. Sara gets it on a personal level. She's lived through the chaos and self-doubt of raising ND kids while being neurodivergent herself. And Sara has two big contributions to the world that we'll be diving into. The first is the Align parenting method. That's align as in align with your feelings, an acronym we'll be breaking down. Sara's signature framework, a 5-step grounding tool that helps parents pause, reset, and respond with calm instead of reacting and frustration. We'll be unpacking Align in depth later on. It's practically tailor-made for those I'm about to lose it moments every indie mom knows well. And secondly, are her Purposefully Me book series. She's the author of Purposefully Me, a 14-book children's series that empowers children to embrace their differences, navigate big feelings, and build resilience through affirmations and storytelling. This series is all about filling the representation and support gap for neurodivergent kids and parents alike. Sara is a certified ADHD coach and neurodiversity advocate, but more importantly, she's a mom who has walked this path. She's passionate about helping parents approach challenges with compassion, confidence, and purpose. Okay, so Sara, go ahead and say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, great. Sara, I'm giving you a virtual hug. May you please go ahead and we're going to do a quick icebreaker, if you will. So,
Sure.
if I had to take a peek at your calendar, which fictional restaurant, whether movie or TV show, would you want to go to for lunch today? Um, yeah, you can go ahead and answer that.
Sure. It would have to be the one in Ratatouille. It,
Oh my gosh.
yes, I love the idea of the entire theme is really built around, anyone can cook, and that I think really mirrors that every child has a purpose.
Yeah.
It's about hidden talents and, misunderstood brilliance and creative identity. And then it's set in Paris. And I went to Paris back in August for the first time. So I'm just fell in love, of course, with the city. I had taken French in middle school and in high school. And
Hmm.
so I think there's such a great message in that movie. It's one that my kids love. It's an old
That
one, but good one. And I
that is
just,
amazing. Oh,
some
that's so great.
wonderful French food.
My older brother's middle name is a French middle name, and that got me into like studying French when I got to high school. It only lasted for a few years, but that was like my introductory to it too. I can't even think of that one. Like I said, my husband, we were talking about it. We would go to the Krusty Krab, but we couldn't figure out underwater or on land. Okay, so
Yes.
speaking of your calendar, what would you say was a highlight of your day within the past 3 days?
Oh, mm, let's see. Well, I don't know if it's more of my calendar or it was kind of an interesting email that I received from
Okay.
my son's PE teacher. And
Okay.
so I have two boys. They are 9 and 6 years old. My
Hmm.
oldest is in fourth grade, and my
Hmm.
youngest is in kindergarten. And I had, a lot of times when we receive these emails, they are
Hmm.
not, it's not a good thing that we're receiving those. And so, the PE teacher absolutely loves my oldest son and
Hmm.
noticed that my little one was struggling in
Hmm.
PE, which, for most kids, that's often their favorite time, at recess, PE, lunch, that's when
Hmm.
they come home and you ask what their favorites were, or art or
Yeah.
music sometimes. And
Hmm.
so my oldest has always really excelled in PE, and she pulled him aside and just said, speaking to you as a leader, your brother is just really struggling. He's having a hard time. The message was able to come back to me. And actually, while I was in my youngest son's OT appointment, we were able to
Hmm.
find out that he has EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and so his joints are very unstable. But the conversation that I had back and forth with the PE teacher afterwards and really explaining some of his sensory processing sensitivities was that my older one, who's, had ADHD and highly gifted and sensory processing disorder and anxiety from very early on,
Hmm.
for her to say that she really came to him as a leader
Hmm.
and was has been so impressed by his growth that it just made me feel really great that while one child is struggling, it seems like there's always one child screaming louder of who needs that support and who needs that help. And so it was just heartwarming that, while at the same time, it's
Hmm.
something specific to my little one that we have to address, but knowing that now my older one has shown such tremendous growth that he's being seen as a leader and someone who can help navigate this
Hmm.
situation is really just overwhelmingly heartwarming.
Wow, that's one heck of a highlight, especially as a mom to look back and like really hone in on that. Because there could be a million things that can, throw us for a loop, get us stressed out. So that was very nice that, that awareness that that adult for your older son had and highlighted what your youngest son was going through. And it seems like they have so much going on. I mean, you are, I think, a very stellar woman. I could give you a glass of rose tea right now and like sip on that for a moment. Okay, so now speaking of looking back, Sarah, let me ask you about your own early parenting journey. For example, any positive parenting courses you may have did. You did all the things, but still wasn't working with your uniquely wired sons.
Yes. Oh, I feel like I've done so many. I
Hmm.
definitely went through and did the positive parenting solutions. I read all of the books. Out of sync. There was, or the whole brain child was one of them.
Hmm.
There were so many different ones, and
Hmm.
the one that actually did really resonate with me was Dr. Becky Kennedy's Good Inside. That one
Okay.
I felt like
Hmm.
just really touched on so much more, but up until that point, all of the other ones that I read or the conversations that we had in the OT offices, it
Hmm.
felt like my oldest son just either outsmarted all of the strategies
Hmm.
or they just didn't fit with what worked for him. It was okay, give more visual schedules or use actual timers or whatever it was that would maybe be beneficial for a neurotypical kid, they
Mhm.
just didn't seem to work for him, and they
Mhm.
didn't seem to work for me either.
Okay, so let's discuss how this standard advice assumes a neurotypical child and parent. Sarah, may you please explain what experts like Debbie Reber say? Mainstream parenting tips come from a baseline of normal versus everybody else, focusing on compliance and behavior that looks good externally.
Well, I personally think that the hardest part about raising a neurodivergent child is being neurodivergent yourself. For the most part, it is hereditary. And so, a lot of moms, as you've seen, it seems like it's kind of a wave in social media that are being diagnosed with ADHD or autism, or other things that are neurodivergent
Hmm.
when they're coming into motherhood. So it's happening, between 35 and 45 in that perimenopause phase as well. And part of that is that we've spent our entire lives masking, and there are so many ADHD characteristics or neurodivergent characteristics that come into play, like a shame spiral, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, perfectionism, using that as a trauma response,
Hmm.
complete emotional dysregulation, time blindness, and so demand avoidance. There's so many different things. And I think about my own executive functioning of,
Hmm.
okay, we're in this OT office and you just laid out all of the things that I'm supposed to be doing for my child's sensory diet. You're talking to a woman who's struggling with executive dysfunction. You're talking to a woman who's struggling with emotional regulation. You're talking to someone who has never had a single strategy in her life that has actually been implemented. Because though I was diagnosed with ADHD at 25 years old, I was
Hmm.
given medication and told, be on your way. So I never actually learned what to do. And so now all of a sudden, our children are triggering us in ways that we didn't even know and understand. And now we're expected to maintain, whether it's these schedules or these rules or just ways to help their emotional meltdowns. And at the same time, we're realizing this is the biggest struggle for ourselves that we've never in our lives had to deal with. And
Hmm.
so we start feeling like we're not good enough in the moment. We're that this perfectionism we've always had is now showing us very clearly that we're not doing this right.
Hmm.
Or you have that thought of, this, why is this working for everyone else? It must be me. And then it's internalized and you go down that shame spiral. And so along this path, it's very difficult for us to even show up for our own children and be able to implement all of these things when we're starting to realize this was not designed for not only our children, but it's not designed for us. And now we're frustrated and overwhelmed and exhausted because in the middle of all this, our children
Hmm.
aren't sleeping. They're in their early, it might be we've been woken up at 3 a.m. and we
Hmm.
still had to wake up for work. And so, there was a point in time where I had a 3-year-old that wasn't sleeping and a 4-month-old that wasn't sleeping, and went to the doctor, and she said, you're going to have to just let the 4-month-old cry it out, because it was every hour I was woken up by one or the other. And it got to that point of, you can control more of the your infant than you
Hmm.
can with the 3-year-old.
Hmm.
And so it's just such a difficult path that no one talks about, and we're just
Hmm.
expected to fit into this mold
Hmm.
when we don't.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely. Because for an indie child or like mom alike, it could be the misbehavior on the child's end or like falling off on the mother end. But it's actually, I see it like it's often a sign of a signal of unmet needs or triggered nervous system, not defiance either way, parent and child. So advice like use for consequences utterly misses the point. Likewise, for an indie mom, advice like it just be more organized and consistent can be tone deaf, like you said, that executive dysfunction and dysregulation, or sensory overwhelm, which I have with my autism. It's all over the board. So now let's talk emotional fallout. Indie moms can often internalize this mismatch as personal failure. So, Sarah, may you speak to any guilt and anxiety that may have plagued you before you understood your family's neurodivergence? Late night wonderings if it's me, is something wrong with me or my child, and especially about your shower epiphany.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's you be, you enter into this low point of motherhood where you're just completely exhausted. You feel like you're not even in your own body. You know, your body has changed so much. The
Mhm.
hormones are raging. So layer that into these things that maybe you've had all throughout your life that you've just very heavily masked and you've performed, you know, for all of those, and fit into this mold that people are expected to think that how you're supposed to thrive in the
Mhm.
everyday world. And so all of that compounds into almost this single moment of where you're just at this loss of, I have absolutely no idea where I should go, what I should do, who I should talk to. I'm ashamed
Mhm.
of myself because now I'm finding out my faults that maybe I never knew were there. You going down this kind of rabbit hole, which leads to insomnia. It leads to irritability. It just completely overwhelms your body, where you're already having that disconnection after giving birth to a child and having those
Mhm.
hormones that are not where they once were, and you just start to internalize this as failure. And
Mhm.
so all of that reaches this point, and to your point earlier, I had a moment in the shower where I was just at a complete breaking point. It was in the midst of both children not sleeping. My oldest one, you know, he had just, I think at that point, aged out of early intervention. The
Mhm.
pandemic hit. So talk about anxiety. The
Mhm.
reason my oldest child stopped sleeping was because of the pandemic. I actually got extremely ill. I'd come back from New York. I had COVID right like March, very beginning of March
Wow.
of 2020, and got up because he needed milk or something in the middle of the night. Got up to go get him milk and had to get to the ground because I knew I was about to collapse. And so um, at that point, not knowing what was wrong with me, my husband
Mhm.
calls, you know, 911, and he has to like get me into the bathroom because I feel like I'm going to be sick, and
Mhm.
shows up the entire fire department in hazmat
Mhm.
suits. And
Wow.
so my 3 year old saw that, and you know, it's 3 a.m. And so anxiety just spiraled for us. So we're anxious about us getting sick, parents getting sick, you know, just worried about loved ones. My child's moved from the structure of his everyday daycare
Mhm.
routine where he had that stability and
Mhm.
safety, and that's
Mhm.
gone. Where he had OT support, now
Mhm.
that's gone. And so I was in the shower at that low point just thinking, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And at that moment, you know, I got out of the shower, I pulled out the notes app on my phone and wrote my first children's book. My husband comes in later, he's like, what is taking you so long to get ready? And I said, I just wrote a book. He's like, I'm sorry, what? You did what? That, who does that? So you know, that it you can find in those low points
Mhm.
the ability to try to come out of that in a way
Mhm.
that becomes really beautiful and
Mhm.
productive, because it's so difficult in those moments, and
Mhm.
sometimes you just have to dig deep and know that you're not going to quit, and you're going to persevere, and you're going to figure this out. And it takes getting that low to kind of see the forest through the trees.
I totally feel that, especially about the shame. For me, it's also an addition of embarrassment because that traditional advice, it just increases all of that for me, especially when it implies that if I just tried harder or followed some method perfectly, that I'd have a compliant brain and a compliant child and we'd all feel calmer. But that's not really the case. So I just want to call that false narrative out and validate that very real struggle. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Oh no, you're just, you're hitting the nail on the head there. I mean, it's for, and you have to think too, for really high achieving neurodivergent women,
Hmm.
motherhood really is that first time that the coping strategies we've been using our entire life, they just
Hmm.
stop working.
I get it, and that's where that big failing part comes in. But then, like, I attribute everything to how I was functioning before, because like me, I had high masking. It seems like the methods, like I was failing the methods, and I was henceforth a failing mom. So, Sarah, if you may articulate and bring clarity to that statement about the failing methods or failing way of acting and behaving before, now that you're a mother.
You know, I think that we grew up high achieving, but on the inside, we're internally dysregulated. I think about my oldest child is very outwardly hyperactive. You know,
Mm-hmm.
his body was moving all over the place from a very early age. You know, he has a proprioceptive input seeker for sensory processing disorder, so he's
Mm-hmm.
falling all over the place. You know, he's very outwardly like that kid that you might remember growing up in class that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, probably took Ritalin and was bouncing off the walls. And, you know, we all knew who that child was, but
Mm-hmm.
somehow, because of the way that we were parented too,
Mm-hmm.
we learned to comply. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
learned that, you know, I'm gonna be a rule follower, and that compliance is more of like performed compliance because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want it to bring any more shame on me. You know, there was just an entire identity that we built around this being capable, you know, that was just complete performance. And while we are internally dysregulated at the same time, but also grew up in a time that was outside more, less electronics, you know, on every
Mm-hmm.
sports team. And so, as far as being able to get that energy out, that was all happening. And we live in a different world now. And so, that piece of motherhood is going to just destabilize the image that we had even of ourselves all growing up. And you have to think
Mm-hmm.
about losing your identity as well and who you were, because that's
Mm-hmm.
another layer that's added in this identity threatening piece. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, then your child is melting down and you're thinking, if that was happening to you as a child, you know, you would have been screamed at, you have been told to get it together, your emotions would have never been validated. So you start to hear things come up for you that maybe is an inner voice of someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all of it that you've been taught your entire
Mm-hmm.
life of how to manage those emotions and bury them deeper. And so
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden they're coming up for you. And then, especially with that rejection sensitivity dysphoria piece that I
Mm-hmm.
struggle with a lot, you're feeling that sense of shame, you're feeling rejected. Why aren't you acting like your brother, or why aren't you acting like your cousin, or why aren't you acting like your sister, or whatever it might be that you hear in your voice inside.
Mm-hmm.
That shame just continues to spiral and just puts you just at a place of just full exposure of vulnerability, that
Mm-hmm.
you've triggered the shame, your internal wiring that you'd learned your entire life that you learn is not working.
Mm-hmm.
So you become softer in a way, but still every moment you're in fight or flight,
Yes.
every moment of every day, and you don't know exactly how to get out of that because we were never taught how to get out of it.
We were never taught. I totally feel that. And a lot of the language you're using, I'm just like, if I would have just had learned that, because I was the one who would practice big words for fun. And when I studied sociology, I learned about disabilitative gestures. And I was like, I do that a lot. Like my children could be trying to get my attention, but I'm not registering that it's even English that they're speaking. I'm just like, my reaction is to like stop, and it comes out in the tone and the messaging and the contact, all these like micro aggressive in my features and stuff like that. And I recently learned that I really struggle with anhedonia, so just like following some rigid program, which experts like Frankie Bagdade that I found actually says it can prevent you from tuning into yourself, into your child, and creates this whole storm where you're not even tuning into anyone's needs whatsoever. And there's this realization that the system is failing the mom and the child, the family, and not the other way around. So we can all just take a collective big sigh of relief, and because there are approaches that honor neurodiversity. So, Sarah, when did you realize that it wasn't you or your son and that you did need a completely different approach?
Oh, that's a great question, because I think for me it took longer than normal.
Mm-hmm.
I had listened to things like, oh, just go for a walk, and which I have to do, which that is a wonderful thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it has all of these things are kind of in combination together. It's like, meditate more in the morning. There's so many different ideas that come to play of the things that we should do.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I realized that what I needed, and I can do all of these proactive things,
Mm-hmm.
but those in the moment, I'm finding myself getting flustered and frustrated
Mm-hmm.
trying to come back down from that is
Mm-hmm.
what I was finding to be the most difficult part,
Mm-hmm.
and especially, as my child was getting older, and then of course no two children are the same, and the way that they react to certain things is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And my oldest son was really struggling with a lot of anxiety and a lot of negative self-talk
Mm-hmm.
internally, and he had just a span of several things that happened to him where he had gotten had a really bad injury
Mm-hmm.
because a teacher actually tackled him.
Right.
Not a like an aftercare teacher. They were playing football.
Oh.
Thank goodness. Sorry, should have started with that.
Yes.
But you should never. But this was like this teacher was a former football player, and you should never. They were playing like touch football. They're not playing tackle football. They're also
Yeah.
on the playground after school. They're not
Mm-hmm.
in a practice, and so he had my son had kind of dislocated and broken his collarbone. So he was
Okay.
out of sports for 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
His teacher, who he absolutely loved, she was really the first teacher who saw him for who he was. She
Beautiful.
died of cancer. So there were just this kind of one thing after another was happening to him, and he was really struggling. And so, needing to be there for him,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that what was happening to him, that he's outwardly frustrated and angry, and what he's expressing is this just internal grief that he's not
Mm-hmm.
really ever had to deal with. And so you have that empathy and compassion, but when you've then all day long had other things that have happened and transpired, so you're at work or
Mm-hmm.
at home, and now noises are really loud for you,
Mm-hmm.
and just think you're getting that sensory input all day long, and your cup is just being depleted to be able to show up then for your
Mm-hmm.
child. It can be extremely difficult, and to do that in a way that your central nervous system is regulated is also very difficult. And I've noticed
Mm-hmm.
that I have trouble transitioning. So, having to go from work to then the kids and then the
Mm-hmm.
volume and all of those things. And so, I have to be that mirror. And that's really where I developed the echo parenting philosophy
Mm-hmm.
of we are on our own healing journey
Mm-hmm.
as we are watching our children. And the only way for them to learn and heal is for them to be able to mirror our own emotions. And I am deeply feeling. I often mimic the energy of those that are around me, and part of that is with my ADHD and the decision fatigue of the day. It's easier for me than for my brain to have to like make that decision on what emotion is going to show up for me. Often will mirror other people around us. So if someone's high energy, I'm high energy. If someone's
Mm-hmm.
calm, I'm calm. And so knowing that the emotions around me were also very negative and
Mm-hmm.
very dark, I had to figure out a way to come up from that, to be the light and to
Mm-hmm.
be what ultimately he needs to mirror and he needs to learn and understand. So that's really where I developed the aligned parenting method,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to stay calm in those really hard moments,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to do that in less than 60 seconds, in a way that is actionable. Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's what often happens is we have all of these things that we know are grounding techniques or great things to do, but yet somehow there's still not the in the moment way of really translating, okay, this is me. I'm starting to react now.
Mm-hmm.
How do I calm myself to then
Mm-hmm.
have my child be able to mirror me
Mm-hmm.
and calm their own bodies?
Yes, yes. And I have heard you share elsewhere that it's connection over perfection, like not pinch your schedules or never raising your voice. Like it's a mantra that I really want to underscore here. And to ask you like how forgiving yourself in doing these quick repairs, because you mentioned 60 seconds and like 60 seconds sounds cute, set a timer too, but when you're in the thick of it, it's like 60 seconds too long sometimes. So like doing these quick repairs when you slip up has helped you far more than any strict method. Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is that we're all going to lose it sometimes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
despite all the things that we do or the steps that we implement, we're human beings. We make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes. I think I had perfectionism is a very difficult characteristic of mine that I've had to overcome, and learning that having that connecting point
Mm-hmm.
and developing that empathy and real connection with your child is so much more important than being a perfect parent. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you do mess up,
Mm-hmm.
teaching them what it means to hold yourself accountable, to
Mm-hmm.
apologize, to repair what's happened, and let go and relinquish that control. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the most difficult part, is that a lot of times because sometimes our brains are out of control, or our bodies are, we're trying to control things that we really shouldn't. And part of that is our child's behavior. And so, like, letting go of that control piece and aiming for the connection,
Mm-hmm.
and also nurturing yourself along the way to say, I am a good parent, and this is something that we can get through. But being that transparent, I've been that way, especially with my oldest son.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it helps to allow him to know that it's okay to make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes, and we're all going to mess up sometimes. And as long as we can repair and apologize without a but you did this and you were overwhelming me, just hold yourself accountability for your reaction. It
Mm-hmm.
goes so much further, and it teaches them so much. It's just a great lesson for them to become good humans.
Hmm. I have shared something very similar in some previous episodes on the show about apologizing without, identity or giving them a whole backstory. Like they're at the time maybe 3 years old or 6 or 9, I have a 4 year old. Like that's just not gonna work. And so this leads me into something, making just a short list of new rules for these indie moms to guide us once we ditch the old playbook. Number one is definitely that your feelings matter too. Feelings drive behavior. You should slow down and simplify. I have to put two things on my schedule because my creative brain will fill in the space of everything that exactly needs to happen in order to like accomplish one thing or another, and leave the mess for tomorrow sometimes. And redefining respect and success are really things that I really want to underscore for the child, because a win may just be that, leaving the mess for tomorrow or making sure you apologize to the child. Is there anything else you want to add to these quick tips for when you ditch the old playbook and start, honoring your brain and your child?
I think that it's okay to wait, and it really is never too late to
Hmm.
make sure that when that apology is happening, or when that
Hmm.
conversation is happening, that it's done at a time where you're both completely regulated.
Hmm.
And I find that that time right before bed is really where they become the most vulnerable. And they're kind of in that in between state. Maybe you've read a book
Hmm.
together or something, or you're telling them good night. And that's a great time to really discuss and have that repair happen.
Hmm.
So making sure that everyone is in that emotional state of regulation.
Hmm.
And it might be a day later, it might be a week later. It's still a lesson that they're going to learn from it, and that's okay. It is never too late.
Hmm.
You can always have that conversation. And the other piece of it, I I like to explain to my son, hey,
Hmm.
my brain works just like yours does. They're still different, but these are some of the things that I struggle with. And I
Hmm.
will talk about, my executive functioning and working memory. I will talk
Hmm.
about my perfectionism, or, my reactivity, and just trying to explain that I am trying really hard
Hmm.
to learn the things that are going to work for me
Hmm.
to regulate my own nervous system,
Hmm.
and that I didn't learn those things as a
Hmm.
child, and try to just position it as a way of, to help them start to understand their own various characteristics that they may have, and lean into with having that neurodivergent brain.
See, see, there is definitely another way to parent here. We just need, I feel like, take a little responsibility to go seek this out, especially if you already know. If you're not, a lot of compassion here, because there's way outdated ideals here, which leads me into your aligned parenting method, this indie friendly by design. You've already mentioned 60 seconds can work quick when you're already overloaded. And unlike a lot of advice that I've received from my husband via Instagram that just say keep your cool or use a stirred voice, maybe in a little bit of a grandstanding. Align is step by step when you have no bandwidth. And Sarah, may you please explain why you created it first before you walk us through a demo?
Yes, absolutely. In short, it's a short method.
Hmm.
I've always liked acronyms. I think from even being really young, like Roy G. Biv and remembering the
Yes.
rainbow colors, and
Yes.
so acronyms have always been something that worked for me.
Hmm.
So I had to think about what is it that we really need to understand, and
Hmm.
then have it be structured so it externalizes that executive functioning. It's body first, so when you think about metacognition, it's really tuning into your body before when you're in that heightened state, you're not logical. So you have to address that
Hmm.
emotional regulation piece before you
Hmm.
can build in the logic behind it. It's repeatable. It helps build that neural familiarity where
Hmm.
you can essentially have that. Oh, and now I'm blanking on the word, but the be able to create those new neural pathways,
Hmm.
and do that especially for children as well. It works in seconds, and that traditional advice of just be calm, this is actually telling you how to do that. And I feel like everybody just says that, and then I'm
Hmm.
like, well, cool, but I mean, it's like I've noticed sometimes when my son is playing basketball and there's a coach that's like just yelling at them to not do whatever it is they're doing, but not telling them what they should be doing instead. So here is where we're going to try to reduce that emotional flooding, that cognitive overload, the shame, the impulsivity,
Hmm.
and have that moment of nurturing ourselves in the same moment.
Yes. Can you go through what each letter means, starting with letter A?
Yes. So A is for awareness. And when I
Hmm.
say awareness, it is more of being aware of the actual physical sensation in your body and
Okay.
how that is showing up for you. The L is for listen and label. So if you are with your child in this moment, you're not only
Hmm.
listening to your own body, you're also listening to theirs, and then you're
Hmm.
labeling that emotion. And this is something you can do on your own,
Hmm.
alongside your child, where they're actually doing it with you, or you can do
Hmm.
it so that they can mirror you. The I is for identify. That's
Hmm.
identify triggers. G
Hmm.
is for grounding, where you're going to implement a grounding technique. And then N is for nurture. So you're nurturing yourself and your child, where that connection piece comes into play.
That sounds so flexible. Run with yourself, with your child, after something's happened, reflect, digest. And I'm very curious, how quickly and effectiveness can moms expect to see this working within their own selves, their families, and their households?
And again, that we're all not a one size all fits all approach.
Hmm.
So I have watched it work so much faster with my oldest
Hmm.
child
Hmm.
than I have with my youngest. And I'd love to give an example of both of those
Hmm.
because really depending, I think, also on their cognitive maturity.
Hmm.
That too is where you have to start to figure out what's going to work better for each child in that moment and what they may like. And so sometimes we'll talk about, especially the grounding portion of
Hmm.
things. My little one, when we're in the car and we're pretty regulated in between things, we do the five,
Hmm.
four, three, two, one grounding. He
Hmm.
loves it. If we're on a walk, he loves it. And recently I tried that in the moment with the align method.
Hmm.
I mean, I got some serious pushback. So,
Oh.
serious, where it's like, okay, well, I thought that that's one that he really, I mean, and he just really pushed back. So, trying to figure out, it can be a little bit of trial and error,
Hmm.
and for yourself as well, of what's really going to
Hmm.
bring you down. But
Hmm.
I can also, give you some of those ideas of the different types of grounding exercises to do
Hmm.
that become really helpful. But I've it didn't take as long with myself,
Hmm.
and I kind of have a way too of which of a reminder.
Mm-hmm.
that I try to do, knowing that I need to walk through this. But at the beginning, you may forget. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
especially with our working memory. And so you can take that situation of what just transpired and
Mm-hmm.
say it didn't go well. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you got to that escalation point, you yelled, it didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
Later, you can actually walk through what would I have done, walk back through the method, and then even share that with your child later as that kind of learning piece and repair part.
Okay, absolutely. And I only ask because sometimes indie brains can like find safety in the guarantee, like exactly how long this is going to take. My husband is big about asking how long exactly something will take, and I'm just like, my brain will not give you an answer. So I can flounder and flail as much as I want. So just to honor where moms may be and where they will be, can be at the end of this conversation. So let's get into a demo time. And I have a very real example. If you can walk me through it, like your grandmother Willow and I'm Pocahontas. So let's say a mom is leaving one child, helping them in the potty. You can see another about to get into something, and then maybe a third person individual is like hungry, asking for food, and you feel this like rising tension. Like, can you guide us through that moment with the alignment?
Yes. So, the first thing with awareness is you're going to start to feel what are those sensations coming up in your body. For me, often it's my chest is tight, my fists are starting to clench, or my jaw clenches. I have noticed that after, if I am really frustrated, my teeth hurt. And so that's something for me, that I'm clenching my jaw and teeth when I'm getting frustrated. I'm balling my fists. My heart is racing. My chest is becoming tight. So I'll whisper to myself, say, okay, align with them. Let's listen and label and say, mommy is feeling really overwhelmed right now, because in this moment, it doesn't necessarily feel like the child is overwhelmed. It feels like the chaos is overwhelming you as the mom. And so you're going to say, okay, I'm listening to my body. I am feeling really overwhelmed, and say that out loud. Identifying triggers in this moment, it's not going to be for your child and what their behavior, their meltdown is happening. For you, it's identifying your triggers. You're becoming curious. You're saying, okay, there's a lot going on. I can't be three people at one time. My I'm immediately going into fight or flight because my little one, I don't want them to get hurt because I'm not there. And what if they choke on something? And so, all of those spiraling thoughts are coming into your brain, and you're identifying, I am being triggered because I'm only one person and this is completely chaotic for me. So I'm having some sensory overwhelm right now. I'm just feeling like I'm not adequate enough maybe to address all of this. And so you say, okay, that really gets you where you're becoming curious and you're starting to develop that empathy, because you can't be angry and have empathy at the same time. And so you're becoming empathetic with yourself, and you're saying, okay, I need to do something quick to ground myself. Let's take a deep breath, count to 10, grab a sip of water. That's going to reset your central nervous system. You could quickly focus on, something in the distance. Like if I'm focusing on a lamp, that kind of brings everything into perspective. And then nurture. You're going to want to nurture yourself in that moment and say, okay, I've got this. I am a good mom. I can do this, and so then you're able to just take that breath and pause. And then once you do that, now you're out of that heightened sense, and you can really start to say, okay, which one of these things is going to be the top priority? If it's I have to sit with my child while they're on the potty right now, then I'm going to have to let the rest of that just go. I'm going to have to just breathe and say, okay, they're not going to get hurt. They're going to be okay. They're not going to choke. I'm going to run over as soon as I finish this, and then I will address my other two children. I've got this. I can do this.
Oh, excuse me. Um, that was a very real example that I had a couple weeks ago now, but it was really hard. And after listening to some shows of yours, I definitely know that I'm pro-receptive, so I can, really strange, but if I do a burpee, something that allows me to, with a purpose, hit the ground really hard, because that like
Oh,
pressure going up through my body, especially like my elbows and like my knees, for some reason feels really grounding for me. And my husband has often said that I can't hold, or like just you in general, like people can't hold gratitude and anger at the same time. And I'm just like, yes, I can. But when you said you can't hold like empathy and anger at the same time, and oh man, I tried it. I was like, wow, just everything just melted. And I was just like you said, I can do this. Who am I didn't need to get that emotional, but
No, I mean, and I love that you know that too about your body, because to me that sounds like you're seeking proprioceptive input to self-regulate. And both of my children, that's exactly what they're doing too. They're hitting the ground, they're falling on the floor, they need that deep pressure. And actually, my son's and this is something that you can do too. And I know that people can't really see me, but my son's OT said there's a spot on your like your breastbone right here, where you can do cha-chas, and you kind of go cha 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 cha, and you do that 5 times. Then you squeeze around your arms and kind of
hmm
hold, and you're giving yourself that hug, and you're doing the cha
hmm
cha 5 times. Then you do
hmm
it around your waist, or wait, you do your pinkies, kind of this a line here that's kind of more, you follow this line down to your elbows.
Oh,
So
oh,
follow where your pinky goes, and then right past your elbow bone up to the more
hmm
of your the top of your arm, and so
hmm
you cross your arms like this, and then you do your cha-chas on the elbow parts, and then on your waist, you hit it right, on your hip bones, and then
hmm
you do on the arches of your feet, and you do cha 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 cha. So even if you have to like put one foot on the other and just hit your arches, and so you do each one 5 times, and it's cha 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 is one, and then do it again. That's going to give yourself that proprioceptive input. So you could even be sitting there while you're in the middle of all that, and kind of doing yourself kind of that pressure, and kind of walking through those 5 things. And so you do chest, basically shoulder area, elbows, hips, and then arches of your feet. And that will give you that proprioceptive input too.
Oh, okay. I've done the arm here, and after going through so many tests of like my autism, which I now think I missed the whole ADHD side, so it might actually be AUDHD. I remembered that I would twirl the arches of my foot on a surface, like really almost painfully, because I could walk into my room and not know which family member's emotional state was where. So I was already like anxious rounding a corner in my own home. So I definitely know about that. And you also offer a free downloadable guide to the Align method, like, because I'm gonna write these notes on the pros type of thing for myself on the
Yes,
back.
and this is a full workbook too. So if you
Ooh,
if you go to my
yeah.
website, and this would have been helpful, as you said, other people in your family. I still have it up because I think it's still relevant. We're gonna
hmm
coming. I have a holiday guide as well that's also helping with some of those other relationships, and it gives different ways of walking through the Align method. But the parenting workbook truly is like, it's a 30-page workbook, but when I say that, it's because there's
hmm
a lot of room to write. There's a lot of room to write within it, to try to figure
Okay.
out what are some of those grounding techniques that work. There's a reflection prompt,
Mm.
but it really walks through how to do this method. And then there's another printable guide that is an easy one to just pin up, that just shows you what the steps are. So just like a one pager that you can throw up on your wall, and have that
Okay.
printed out.
hmm
Now that I'm saying that, I probably should do a revision of it, where right now it looks really pretty, but nobody's going to want to print out dark, use all the green in their computer just to print that out. So I can also put one up that's a little bit easier, or
hmm
even put it in the front of that workbook, so that you can just have that one to pin up. But yes, it walks through these scenarios.
hmm
Again, you can do the same thing with yourself, to give yourself a quick moment to
hmm
just come back to where you need to be,
hmm
if you need to step away even, or you can do it alongside your child. And I do it
hmm
with both of them as well. And then the
Okay.
nurturing piece there is making sure that they know that they're a good kid, that you love them, that you connect to them. But you have to do that to yourself too. You
hmm
have to remind yourself that you are a good parent, and you're just having a hard time. And so that's just such a critical piece that
hmm
I think is maybe missed in a lot of the other methods,
hmm
of basically telling yourself that it's okay and you're going to get
hmm
through this.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it sounds like while Align is great for in the moment regulation, Sarah, how about the broader grad? broader, broader gaps in traditional advice and how your work fills them. For example, typical parenting resources seldom address how isolating it feels to be an indie mom in a neurotypical world.
Yes. I think that we are masking our way through everything that we're
Hmm.
doing, whether, we're trying to listen in a school PTA meeting or,
Hmm.
trying to just heal that shame that we constantly carry in
Hmm.
isolation. I think community is such a big piece of it. It's interesting now when I look back on my
Hmm.
friendships from very different walks of life, whether it was early childhood or college or early adulthood, and
Hmm.
even now some new friendships that I've made in our neighborhood,
Hmm.
and then realizing how many of those, almost probably 95% of them,
Hmm.
they also have some form of being neurodivergent, whether they have ADHD or autism or ADHD, and there's
Hmm.
some connecting point that allows us to just get each other and understand each other. And there's a ton of Facebook groups out there that bring that community in
Hmm.
where, it was very difficult. It felt strange for me to talk to someone about my child who's surpassing his milestones from a very early age and speaking full sentences at 2 years old, and um, the highly gifted part of it all. And I think a lot of us that say that we are high functioning really are,
Hmm.
that we have a gifted brain that goes alongside of it, so we're better at
Hmm.
masking all of these things. And
Oh, yeah.
so I remember joining one of those Facebook groups
Hmm.
for, I think it was Colorado gifted kids. And then I met a mom for a play date. And it was so beautiful watching him with both of her children who are gifted, her older son and her daughter, that was my son's age, and how they, instead of just playing on a playground, they didn't just go swing or do the things they're supposed to do. Every different area of the playground, they turned into planets and they named them and they created different life forms on each of these planets. And so it was so
Oh, man.
beautiful to watch them. And when you can find those people to connect with,
Hmm.
you're starting to have those conversations where you
Hmm.
feel less alone, and where you realize that the normal things of parenting, of saying just try harder and just be calm, and
Hmm.
these are just the, have these schedules and reminders that you get completely burned out on, that is normal. That is normal for a neurodivergent brain. And so it's okay that we have to try to adapt something that's different, because our wiring is different and it's not going to work for us. And that's okay. I think we live in a world that is built for a neurotypical person. I mean, even for those with disabilities that go beyond just our neurological disabilities. When you think about people who have actual disabilities that are maybe in a wheelchair, or
Hmm.
our world is not built for people that are different. And
Hmm.
so the way I'm really trying to change that is through my Purposefully Me series, which is
Hmm.
a book series that I think is also beautiful for the parent as well. So there's 14 books. It's a classroom of children. They have the teacher that we all strive to be, who knows all the right strategies to put into place.
Hmm.
And so, I'm sorry,
Oh, no, you're good.
I should take a sip of water. So
I
because of that,
yeah.
because of that, I want for everyone to feel less alone in their own brains. And I've
Hmm.
had therapists and teachers, OTs, all review these books, and one of them said, I saw myself in this book, but I
Hmm.
saw my son or my daughter in this other book. And
Hmm.
so they're centered around difficult topics like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, executive functioning, giftedness, being twice exceptional, bullying, divorce, death. So there's a whole gamut of these topics, and
Hmm.
there's essentially a conflict or some inner struggle that happens, and then how we can overcome that and strategies along the way. But while it is illustrated and more probably appropriate for elementary school ages,
Hmm.
I actually have a friend that I saw recently, a former colleague, and she said, my daughter's 13 and she's really struggling. I'm going to bring this book to her because I think it's going to resonate with her in the simplicity of it, and the way that the emotion is really pulled from the illustrations, and then the
Mm-hmm.
discussion guide in the back where there are questions and there's, definitions as well to walk through. That's going to resonate more than trying to give her more of an adult like book
Mm-hmm.
without the pictures, because she is a
Yeah.
teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it really could be for those that are a bit older as well, and just to know that that's just the traditional way of doing things is
Mm-hmm.
actually what we're trying to stop. We're trying to break those generational cycles.
Yeah.
They're my children don't respond well to force. They don't respond well to yelling or
Mm-hmm.
consequences. There's many
Mm-hmm.
natural consequences that come into
Oh
play,
yeah.
but that's not teaching them
Yeah.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just compartmentalizing that
Mm-hmm.
and burying it because they were dysregulated in the moment, and they're not going to actually understand what you're saying in that moment anyway.
That is so beautiful, beautiful. And I'm really grateful how this segued into your books, from finding your community, neurodivergent families, your safe space where you don't have to apologize for your child's behavior, your books, the feedback you got from it, the purposefully part. A purposefully me series is really hitting well. So, Sarah, can you please recap what actually works for indie moms in place of old advice as you have discussed throughout this conversation?
Oh yes, I feel like there's so many good points that you it's there's not a one size fits all approach. That's
Hmm.
definitely not something that's going to work for neurodivergent brains. Regulation is more powerful than discipline.
Hmm.
Connection, it lowers your cortisol faster than if you're correcting a child. So that connection overcorrection is going to be huge. You can't shame your nervous system into safety.
Hmm.
The biggest thing about someone who is neurodivergent is you have to feel safe.
Hmm.
You have to feel safe enough to be able to be your complete self, to be able to be vulnerable. And that traditional parenting is it's really only working for compliant nervous systems. Our nervous systems are overwhelmed. Our
Hmm.
nervous systems live in the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn,
Hmm.
state. And so, just know that you're not alone in all of it. And
Hmm.
if you're exhausted, it's not because you're weak. It's
Hmm.
because you're parenting with two or more in our household
Hmm.
dysregulated brains.
Hmm.
And that's a lot, and you have to be able to just breathe and give yourself that compassion and empathy that you're doing your absolute best. And the more vulnerable you are and the more transparent and honest you are, the more your children are going to learn from you. And they're going to learn how to be real people. And I think people say that, gentle parenting is going to create weak human beings. I completely disagree. It's going to create emotional intelligence that I think most people that are adults in our world lack.
Hmm.
And so being able to have that emotional intelligence is going to go a really long way.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I would love to celebrate what you just said as a final love note to empower any and all mommies listening. As words of encouragement, you're our Grandmother Willow, we're Pocahontas here, especially if they have felt like their best days were behind them. So, as we wrap up, one final bonus question is there, I know your book series is still being released, there's like 14 books like over the course of a year.
Yes.
Is there anything else exciting coming up in your life or any other passion projects that you're currently working on?
Oh, I think the main goal is getting all of these books out. There are four that are I think three are that are completely available now. The
Hmm.
fourth and fifth are actually going to print right now. We're
Hmm.
working on the illustrations of the sixth, so
Hmm.
I think that is a big thing. My ultimate goal is to get these into the school system, so that's a big project that I'm working on. For me, and this is a hard topic, but there is still so much gun violence in schools that's happening, and you know, I, despite the gun problem, we have a mental health crisis on our hands. And so my mind immediately will go to what's happening inside the mind of the child that maybe
Mm-hmm.
was part of this. And so was there not support there? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what was missing? So that is really my ultimate goal, to start earlier. And I think, you know, the earlier we can start in elementary school, and then, you know, even into middle school and high school, that is my ultimate goal, to get these books into school, to even have them as part of a curriculum. I see a future one day with a nonprofit and a way of connecting these children to have some more of these types of open conversations,
Mm-hmm.
centered around some of these central themes in the books, and have, you know, those difficult conversations to find others who are like them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, maybe they connect because they both, you know, love Legos, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
they have a sick grandparent, or they
Mm-hmm.
both have ADHD, or they both have autism. You know, I think just creating more of that human connection is going to help the loneliness piece that enters into the depression and anxiety and feeling like you don't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can just help children feel less alone in their own brains, and like there is
Mm-hmm.
somewhere for them to go and connect and thrive, that that is going to be a piece that's missing in this puzzle of just the devastation that we've had with all of the school shootings.
Man, now I'm gonna take a little bit of leeway here and go ahead and say, if you did have the choice to do anything differently, it already sounds like you would not. Especially cherry on top for me was like you want to get these books into the school system because this has been an amazing conversation, and if everyone can like distill that from reading your books, that would be so great. And I just want to say thank you for a wonderful conversation. You have been a true light and a joy, and just an incredible stellar woman to have this conversation with. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
As we wrap up, again, Sara is generously offering her aligned parenting method, y'all. If you want a handy reminder of the aligned steps we practiced today, Sara has a free PDF guide on her site, perfect to stick on the fridge or save on your phone for when those tough moments hit. At saralewishartley.com, SaralewisHartley.com. So if today resonated with you, you can download Sara's free aligned parenting guide. It's a simple connection first framework to help you respond instead of reacting when things feel overwhelming. And Sara also has that children's book series, Purposefully Me, that brings these same concepts to children in an accessible, affirming way that you can find on her website. If you have children in the rough ages of 5 to 10 age range, check out the Purposefully Me children's books. These books are a wonderful way to help your child, and frankly, your whole family, feel seen and understood. From ADHD and autism to bullying and big feelings, each story opens up conversations. You can find the series on Sara's website. Titles like Purposefully Brave, Purposefully Calm, and more available in ebook and hardcover. And I encourage you to connect with and follow Sara for more support online and for ongoing inspiration. You can follow her at Sara Lewis Hartley on Instagram for daily tips and staying calm and connected as an ND parent. Since our goal is to support ND moms who often feel isolated, I encourage you guys to share this episode with someone who might need it. You never know which mom out there is secretly drowning in all that standard advice. Send this to a friend or in your mom group. It could be that lifeline that helps another parent feel seen. Until then, till the next one, mama.